Hi, this video is George MacDonald Ross's translation of Isaac Newton's 3 Rules for Philosophizing from the second edition of Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy. Ross's introduction comes first. Here we go. Introduction by George MacDonald Ross. Newton's Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy was written in Latin and first published in 1687. A second edition appeared in 1713 and a third in 1727. In addition to the printed texts, we have Newton's own original manuscript and his handwritten amendments to his personal copies. There is a magnificent modern edition which is based on a photographic reprint of the third edition, and which lists all of the variations from earlier printed and manuscript versions, Isaac Newton's Principia, edited by Alexandre Corre and I. Bernard Cohen in 2 volumes. This is the edition I have used for my translations, and page numbers in square brackets refer to the page numbers of the third edition. The rules. In the short preface to Book 3, Newton explains that the first 2 books were purely mathematical, and that it is only now that he applies the mathematics to the phenomena of nature, in particular how the solar system is governed by the law of universal gravitation. He starts with a brief disquisition on scientific method. In the first edition, this takes the form of 3 hypotheses, but in the second edition they become 3 rules of philosophizing. A 4th rule was added in the third edition. There are substantial differences from the version in the first edition, and I have chosen to translate from the second edition since it reflects Newton's thinking during the period when he was in dispute with Leibniz. Leibniz had copies of each edition as they appeared. The most important is Rule 3, in which Newton argues that we can establish the universal qualities of bodies not by reason, but by induction from sense experience, though he doesn't actually use the word induction here. Isaac Newton, Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy, 2nd edition, 1713. Translation copyright by George MacDonald Ross, 1999. Book 3, The Rules of Philosophizing. Rule 1. No more causes of natural things are to be admitted than such as are true, and sufficient for explaining the phenomena they cause. Philosophers certainly say that nature does nothing in vain, and something happens in vain if it comes about by more means when it could have come about by fewer, for nature is simple and does not luxuriate in superfluous causes of things. Rule 2. Therefore the same causes must be assigned to natural effects of the same kind, as far as is possible. For example, the cause of respiration in humans and in animals, the cause of falling stones in Europe and in America, the cause of light in a cooking fire and in the sun, the cause of the reflection of light on Earth and in the planets. Rule 3. The qualities of bodies which cannot be intensified or diminished, and which belong to all bodies of which observations can be made, must be taken as qualities of all bodies. The qualities of bodies become known only by observation, and hence whatever qualities square with observation universally must be held to be universal, and those which cannot be diminished cannot be lost to them. Certainly, fantastic theories must not be arbitrarily invented contrary to the regularity of experience, nor must there be any departure from the harmony of nature, since she tends to be simple and always consistent with herself. The extension of bodies is known only by the senses, and although it is not sensed in all of them, it is attributed to all of them, since it belongs to all sensible bodies. We experience many bodies as being hard, but the hardness of the whole arises from the hardness of the parts, and we rightly conclude from this that the undivided particles of all bodies are hard, and not just those of the bodies we sense. We infer that all bodies are impenetrable, not by reason, but by sensation. Those which we handle are discovered to be impenetrable, and we conclude from this that impenetrability is a property of all bodies. We infer that all bodies are capable of motion, and persist in their motion or rest by virtue of certain forces, which we call inertial forces, from these properties of visible bodies. The extension, hardness, impenetrability, mobility, and inertial force of the whole arises from the extension, hardness, impenetrability, mobility, and inertial forces of the parts. From this we conclude that all the smallest parts of all bodies are extended and hard and impenetrable, and mobile, and endowed with inertial forces, and this is the foundation of the whole of philosophy. Further, we know from the phenomena that the divided parts of bodies which are in mutual contact can be separated from each other, and from mathematics it is certain that the undivided parts can be distinguished into smaller parts by reason. But it is uncertain whether distinct parts which have not yet been divided can be divided and separated from each other by natural forces. But if a single experiment established that some undivided particle underwent division by breaking a hard and solid body, we would conclude, by means of the present rule, that not only divided parts were separable, but also that undivided parts could be divided to infinity. Finally, if it is universally established by experience and astronomical observations that all bodies in the Earth's orbit gravitate towards the Earth in proportion to the quantity of matter in each, and that the Moon gravitates towards the Earth in proportion to the quantity of its matter, and that the ocean in turn gravitates towards the Moon, and that all the planets gravitate towards each other, and that there is a similar gravitation of the comets towards the Sun, then, in accordance with the present rule, it must be said that all bodies gravitate towards each other. For the argument from the phenomena about universal gravitation will be even stronger than the argument about the impenetrability of bodies, since we have absolutely no experience or observation in the case of celestial bodies. However, I certainly do not assert that gravity is essential to bodies. The only intrinsic force I recognize is inertial force. It is immutable, whereas gravity is diminished by decreasing distance from the Earth.